Saturday, June 15th, 2024. The Ritz-Carlton, Newport Beach, California. What should have been the happiest day of Emma Rodriguez's life was about to become the most humiliating, until a piece of paper in her purse would turn everything upside down and expose the most shocking truth in wedding history. Because while everyone thought Emma was marrying billionaire tech mogul James Wellington for his money, they had no idea that Emma Rodriguez was worth 3 times more than her husband-to-be, and the prenup they were all whispering about. It wasn't protecting James from Emma, it was protecting Emma from James. Emma stood in the bridal suite of the Ritz-Carlton, adjusting her $15,000 wedding dress, which she had paid for herself, though nobody knew that, when she heard the voices outside her door. Voices that made her blood run cold. "I still can't believe James is going through with this," came the sharp voice of his mother, Victoria Wellington. "That girl is nothing but a common gold digger." "Mother's right," added James's sister, Melissa. "She's a waitress from East LA who hit the jackpot. I mean, look at this wedding. James is spending $500,000 on this circus." Emma's maid of honor, her sister Sophia, squeezed her hand. "Em, don't listen to them. They don't know anything about you." But Emma did listen. She listened to every cruel word. "Did you see her family?" Victoria continued, her voice dripping with disdain. "Her father is a mechanic. Her mother cleans houses. They probably think they've won the lottery." "The prenup will at least protect James's assets," said another voice. "James's brother Marcus. Though I'm sure she'll find a way around it eventually. These types always do." Emma felt tears threatening to ruin her makeup. For 2 years, she'd endured the Wellington family's subtle insults, their backhanded compliments, their constant suggestions that she wasn't quite right for James. "She doesn't even have a college degree," Melissa added. "What does she possibly have to offer someone like James besides her looks?" Sophia was furious. "Emma, you don't have to take this. We can walk out right now." But Emma took a deep breath and looked at herself in the mirror. At 28, she was beautiful, intelligent, and secretly one of the most successful entrepreneurs in California. But the Wellington family saw only what they wanted to see, a poor girl trying to marry up. "At least the prenuptial agreement is ironclad," Victoria was saying. "James's lawyer made sure of that. If this marriage fails, she gets nothing. Absolutely nothing." Emma almost laughed. If only they knew. 3 months ago, when James had awkwardly brought up the prenup, Emma had surprised him by insisting they each get their own lawyers. James assumed it was because she wanted to negotiate better terms for herself. He had no idea that Emma's lawyer was one of the most expensive family law attorneys in Beverly Hills, and that the prenup had been carefully crafted to protect something far more valuable than James's tech company. "Should we tell them?" Sophia whispered, seeing Emma's expression. "Not yet," Emma replied quietly. "Let them have their moment. They'll learn the truth soon enough." The wedding ceremony was a fairy tale. 200 guests, a string quartet, flowers, flown in from Ecuador, and a venue that cost more per hour than most people made in a month. Emma walked down the aisle on her father's arm, ignoring the whispers and pointed looks from the Wellington side of the aisle. James looked handsome in his custom tuxedo, genuinely smiling as she approached. Despite his family's cruelty, Emma loved him. She'd fallen for the kind, funny man who had asked her out after she'd served him coffee at the small cafe where she'd been. Observing her investment, as they exchanged vows, Emma could see Victoria Wellington dabbing her eyes, not with joy, but with what looked like resignation. The woman was literally crying over her son marrying beneath his station. "You may kiss." "The bride," the officiant announced. As James lifted her veil and kissed her, Emma heard Victoria mutter to someone beside her, "Well, it's done. At least the prenup will protect the family fortune." The reception was in full swing when Emma excused herself to touch up her makeup. As she passed a group of James's college friends, she overheard their conversation. "Dude, your boy James really stepped in it this time," one was saying. I mean, she's hot, but come on. A waitress? His trust fund is going to take a hit. That's what prenups are for, another replied. Smart move on James's part. When this falls apart in a few years, she'll walk away with nothing. Still, I feel bad for the guy. You know she's only with him for the money. Emma had heard enough. She walked back to the head table where James was laughing with his groomsmen, completely oblivious to his family's commentary. Having fun? He asked, pulling her close. The best, she replied, kissing his cheek. James, can I ask you something? Anything. Did you bring a copy of our prenup with you today? James looked confused. The prenup? Why would I bring that to our wedding? Because I think your family might want to see it. James laughed, thinking his new wife was making a joke. But Emma wasn't joking. She reached into her purse and pulled out a folded document, a copy of their prenuptial agreement. Emma, what are you doing? James asked, suddenly nervous. I'm about to show your family exactly what kind of woman you married. She stood up, tapped her champagne glass with a fork, and addressed the room. Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to make a toast. But first, I have something to share with the Wellington family. Victoria Wellington looked horrified. Emma, dear, this isn't the time. Actually, Mother Wellington, this is the perfect time. Because I heard you all discussing the prenup earlier, and I realized there's something you don't understand about it. Emma held up the document. You see, this prenup doesn't protect James from me. It protects me from James. The ballroom went silent. What do you mean? Victoria asked weakly. Emma smiled, not the sweet, accommodating smile she'd been wearing for 2 years, but the confident smile of a woman who just played the longest game of her life. I mean, James didn't marry a gold digger. He married a gold mine. The silence in the Ritz-Carlton ballroom was deafening as Emma Wellington, née Rodriguez, held up her prenuptial agreement like a weapon that was about to destroy everything the Wellington family believed about their new daughter-in-law. Because what Emma was about to reveal wouldn't just shock them, it would prove that the poor waitress they'd been mocking was actually worth $847 million. And James had no idea he'd just married one of the wealthiest women in California. Emma looked around the ballroom at 200 faces staring at her in confusion, anticipation, and growing concern. James's hand was on her arm, trying to gently pull her back to a seat. Emma, sweetheart, maybe we should... James, trust me on this, she said softly, then turned back to the crowd. I want to tell you all a story. Victoria Wellington looked like she was about to faint. Emma, please, this is neither the time nor the place. Actually, Mother Wellington, this is exactly the right time. Because for 2 years you've been telling everyone who would listen that I'm a gold digger who trapped your son. The tension in the room was palpable. Wedding guests were pulling out their phones, sensing they were about to witness something extraordinary. 2 years ago, I was working at Luna Coffee on Melrose Avenue, not because I needed the job, but because I owned the building and was conducting market research for a new business venture. James's face showed the first flicker of confusion. Emma, what are you talking about? When you asked me out, James, I thought you were sweet and genuine. So I decided to see if you would still be interested in me if you thought I was just a waitress. Emma walked to the center of the dance floor, all eyes on her. What I didn't expect was to fall in love with you. What I really didn't expect was, and for your family, to spend 2 years treating me like I was some kind of parasite. Victoria Wellington stood up, her face red with embarrassment and anger. Emma, I think you've had too much champagne. I haven't had any champagne, Victoria. I've been completely sober, watching and listening to everything you've said about me for 24 months. Emma pulled out her phone and connected it to the wedding venue's projection system. Suddenly, the wall behind the head table displayed a financial document. This is my personal financial statement prepared by Goldman Sachs last month. The room gasped as they saw the number. Net worth, 847,000. James's champagne glass fell from his hand, shattering on the floor. Emma, this is impossible. You're a waitress. You live in a studio apartment. I live in a $2.3 million penthouse in Century City. The studio apartment you've been to is my research facility, a property I bought to stay close to my investments in the area. She clicked to the next slide, showing a portfolio of companies and properties. Luna Coffee, where we met. I don't. Just work there. I own it, along with 47 other locations across California. The projection showed a dizzying array of business holdings. Luna Coffee Chain, 47 locations, valued at 45 million. Rodriguez Properties, commercial real estate portfolio worth 312 million. Tech investments, early stakes in 12 startups, now worth 278 million. Stock portfolio, $156 million in blue chip investments. Private equity, $56 million in various funds. My family doesn't know about most of this, Emma continued, looking at her shocked parents in the front row. I've been supporting them quietly for years, but I wanted to build my wealth independently before revealing it. James was staring at the projection like it was written in hieroglyphics. Emma, I don't understand. Why didn't you tell me? Because I wanted to make sure you loved Emma Rodriguez the person, not Emma Rodriguez the fortune. Emma held up the prenuptial agreement again. This document doesn't protect your $50 million tech company from me, James. It protects my $847 million empire from everyone. She turned to Victoria Wellington, who was now sitting down and fanning herself with a napkin. Victoria, you were so concerned about your son's money, but according to this prenup, if James and I divorce, he gets exactly what I came into this marriage with, which is nothing from him. But if I die, or if we divorce due to infidelity on his part, my assets remain completely separate and untouchable. The room was buzzing with whispers and shocked conversations. James, Emma said, turning to her new husband, I need you to know that this doesn't change anything between us. I love you for who you are, not what you have. James was still processing. But Emma, why the elaborate deception? Why not just tell me the truth from the beginning? Because in my experience, when people know you're wealthy, they treat you differently. They want something from you. I needed to know that you wanted me for me. She gestured to his family. And I needed to see who your family really was when they thought they held all the power. Victoria Wellington finally found her voice. Emma, we didn't know. You didn't know because you never bothered to ask. You saw a Latina woman working in a coffee shop and assumed you knew my entire story. Emma walked over to where her parents were sitting, both looking stunned by their daughter's revelation. Mama, Papa, I'm sorry I kept this from you, but I wanted to prove that I could build something on my own, the way you taught me. Her father, tears in his eyes, stood up and hugged her. Mia, we're proud of you no matter what, but you never had to prove anything to us. I know, Papa, but I had to prove it to myself. She turned back to the Wellington family, and apparently I had to prove it to some other people too. The ballroom was still in stunned silence when Emma's phone rang. She looked at the caller ID and smiled. Excuse me, everyone. I need to take this call. She answered the phone on speaker. Emma, this is David Chen from Forbes. We've been trying to reach you for weeks about our upcoming 40 Under 40 issue. You're going to be our cover story. The room erupted in shocked murmurs. David, I'm actually in the middle of my wedding reception. Your wedding? Congratulations. Is your husband in business as well? Emma looked at James, who was still staring at her like she was a stranger. He's in tech. He's worth about... James, what's your company valued at again? James stammered. About 50 million. 50 million. That's nice, David. A solid mid-level tech company. Victoria Wellington looked like she was going to be sick. Emma, we'll need to update your bio for the article. Should we include information about your husband's business? Emma smiled sweetly at the Wellington family. "You know what, David? Let's keep the focus on my companies. I wouldn't want anyone to think I got where I am because of my husband's success." The Forbes editor laughed. "Of course not. We'll see you next week for the photo shoot." As Emma hung up, she looked around the room at 200 faces staring at her in awe, shock, and newfound respect. But the person she was most concerned about was James, who looked like his entire world had just been turned upside down. "James, are you okay?" He looked at her with an expression she couldn't read. "Emma, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be completely honest with me. Anything. If you're worth almost $1 billion, why did you marry me?" The question hung in the air like a sword waiting to fall. James Wellington, tech entrepreneur worth $50 million, had just asked his billionaire wife why she had married him. The answer Emma gave would either save their marriage or reveal that she had been playing a game far more complex than anyone imagined. Because the truth about why Emma Rodriguez had chosen James Wellington was more shocking than her fortune. And it was about to break his heart in the most beautiful way possible. Emma looked at James, her husband of 3 hours, and saw something in his eyes that made her chest tighten. It wasn't anger or betrayal. It was insecurity, the same insecurity she'd seen in the mirror every day before she'd built her empire. "James, do you really want me to answer that here? In front of everyone?" "Yes," he said quietly, "because I need to know if this whole thing has been some kind of elaborate joke." The ballroom was so quiet you could hear the ocean waves through the windows. Emma's parents looked worried, the Wellington family looked terrified, and 200 wedding guests were holding their breath. Emma took James's hands in hers. "I married you, James Wellington, because you're the first man who ever made me laugh at myself." "Do you remember our first date? You took me to that terrible sushi place in Culver City because you'd read online that it was authentic, and the fish was so bad we both got food poisoning." James nodded, a small smile breaking through his confusion. "Instead of being embarrassed or angry, you sat with me in the emergency room at 2 a.m., making jokes about how we'd have a great story to tell our kids someday." Emma's voice was getting stronger, more confident. "You didn't try to impress me with expensive restaurants or fancy cars. You just talked to me like I was interesting, like my thoughts mattered." "Emma, let me finish. You want to know why I married you? It's because when you looked at the waitress version of me, you saw someone worth knowing. Not someone worth buying or someone worth using or someone worth tolerating. Someone worth knowing." Emma turned slightly so she could address both James and the room. "I've been wealthy since I was 23. Do you know what that's like for a young woman? Every man who's ever asked me out has wanted something. My money, my connections, my influence." She looked directly at Victoria Wellington. "I've had men pretend to love me so they could get access to my investment portfolio. I've had men propose to me after finding out about my real estate holdings. I've had men fake entire relationships just to get me to fund their business ventures." James's expression was softening as he began to understand. "So, when I met a man who had no idea who I really was and he liked me anyway, that was precious to me. James, I kept my secret because I was terrified. Terrified that if you knew the truth, you'd either run away because you felt intimidated or you'd stay for the wrong reasons." Emma's voice cracked slightly. "I've been alone for so long, rich and alone, successful and alone, powerful and alone." She wiped a tear from her eye, smudging her wedding makeup for the first time all day. "When you proposed to me 6 months ago, in that terrible little restaurant where we had our first non-food poisoning date, I realized something." "What?" "I realized that I'd rather be Emma Rodriguez, the billionaire, with James Wellington, the good man, than Emma Rodriguez, the billionaire, with anyone else in the world." Victoria Wellington stood up slowly. "Emma, we owe you an apology." "No, Victoria, you owe your son an apology." Emma turned to face the Wellington family. You've spent 2 years undermining James's happiness because you thought he was making a mistake. You made him doubt his own judgment about the woman he loved. Her voice grew stronger, more commanding. The voice of a woman who'd built an empire. Your son has excellent instincts about people. He saw value in me when I was presenting myself as someone with nothing to offer financially. That says something beautiful about who he is. James squeezed her hand. Emma, you didn't have to do this. You didn't have to expose yourself like this. Yes, I did, because your family needed to learn that worth isn't measured in trust funds and stock portfolios. Emma pulled out her phone again and displayed another slide on the projection screen. This is a list of the charities I support anonymously. 47 million donated last year alone. The list was staggering. Children's hospitals, homeless shelters, scholarship funds, small business loan programs. This is why I've kept my wealth private. Because I believe money should be used to lift people up, not to make them feel small. She looked around the room. I've spent 2 years listening to your family talk about my family like we were somehow inferior, because we work with our hands instead of our keyboards. Victoria Wellington was crying now. Emma, please. We were wrong. We were so wrong. 50 million, that's nice, David. A solid mid-level tech company. Victoria Wellington looked like she was going to be sick. Emma, we'll need to update your bio for the article. Should we include information about your husband's business? Emma smiled sweetly at the Wellington family. You know what, David? Let's keep the focus on my companies. I wouldn't want anyone to think I got where I am because of my husband's success. The Forbes editor laughed. Of course not. We'll see you next week for the photo shoot. As Emma hung up, she looked around the room at 200 faces staring at her in awe, shock, and newfound respect. But the person she was most concerned about was James, who looked like his entire world had just been turned upside down. James, are you okay? He looked at her with an expression she couldn't read. Emma, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be completely honest with me. Anything. If you're worth almost $1 billion, why did you marry me? The question hung in the air like a sword waiting to fall. James Wellington, tech entrepreneur worth $50 million, had just asked his billionaire wife why she had married him. The answer Emma gave would either save their marriage or reveal that she had been playing a game far more complex than anyone imagined. Because the truth about why Emma Rodriguez had chosen James Wellington was more shocking than her fortune. And it was about to break his heart in the most beautiful way possible. Emma looked at James, her husband of 3 hours, and saw something in his eyes that made her chest tighten. It wasn't anger or betrayal. It was insecurity. The same insecurity she'd seen in the mirror every day before she'd built her empire. James, do you really want me to answer that here, in front of everyone? Yes, he said quietly, because I need to know if this whole thing has been some kind of elaborate joke. The ballroom was so quiet you could hear the ocean waves through the windows. Emma's parents looked worried. The Wellington family looked terrified, and 200 wedding guests were holding their breath. Emma took James's hands in hers. I married you, James Wellington, because you're the first man who ever made me laugh at myself. Do you remember our first date? You took me to that terrible sushi place in Culver City because you'd read online that it was authentic, and the fish was so bad we both got food poisoning. James nodded, a small smile breaking through his confusion. Instead of being embarrassed or angry, you sat with me in the emergency room at 2 a.m., making jokes about how we'd have a great story to tell our kids someday. Emma's voice was getting stronger, more confident. You didn't try to impress me with expensive restaurants or fancy cars. You just talked to me like I was interesting, like my thoughts mattered. Emma, let me finish. You want to know why I married you? It's because when you looked at the waitress version of me, you saw someone worth knowing, not someone worth buying or someone worth using or someone worth tolerating, someone worth knowing. Emma turned slightly so she could address both James and the room. I've been wealthy since I was 23. Do you know what that's like for a young woman? Every man who's ever asked me out has wanted something. My money, my connections, my influence. She looked directly at Victoria Wellington. I've had men pretend to love me so they could get access to my investment portfolio. I've had men propose to me after finding out about my real estate holdings. I've had men fake entire relationships just to get me to fund their business ventures. James's expression was softening as he began to understand. So, when I met a man who had no idea who I really was, and he liked me anyway, that was precious to me. James, I kept my secret because I was terrified. Terrified that if you knew the truth, you'd either run away because you felt intimidated or you'd stay for the wrong reasons. Emma's voice cracked slightly. I've been alone for so long, rich and alone, successful and alone, powerful and alone. She wiped a tear from her eye, smudging her wedding makeup for the first time all day. When you proposed to me 6 months ago, in that terrible little restaurant where we had our first non-food poisoning date, I realized something. What? I realized that I'd rather be Emma Rodriguez, the billionaire, with James Wellington, the good man, than Emma Rodriguez, the billionaire, with anyone else in the world. Victoria Wellington stood up slowly. Emma, we owe you an apology. No, Victoria, you owe your son an apology. Emma turned to face the Wellington family. You've spent 2 years undermining James's happiness because you thought he was making a mistake. You made him doubt his own judgment about the woman he loved. Her voice grew stronger, more commanding, the voice of a woman who'd built an empire. Your son has excellent instincts about people. He saw value in me when I was presenting myself as someone with nothing to offer financially. That says something beautiful about who he is. James squeezed her hand. Emma, you didn't have to do this. You didn't have to expose yourself like this. Yes, I did, because your family needed to learn that worth isn't measured in trust funds and stock portfolios. Emma pulled out her phone again and displayed another slide on the projection screen. This is a list of the charities I support anonymously. 47 million donated last year alone. The list was staggering. Children's hospitals, homeless shelters, scholarship funds, small business loan programs. This is why I've kept my wealth private. Because I believe money should be used to lift people up, not to make them feel small. She looked around the room. I've spent 2 years listening to your family talk about my family like we were somehow inferior because we work with our hands instead of our keyboards. Victoria Wellington was crying now. Emma, please, we were wrong. We were so wrong. Yes, you were. My father is a mechanic, but he's also the man who taught me that if you're not part of the solution, you're part of the problem. My mother cleans houses, but she's also the woman who showed me that honest work is noble work. James stepped closer to Emma, his confusion replaced by something that looked like awe. Emma, all this time, you've been taking care of everyone. Your family, your employees, your community. Who takes care of you? Emma smiled, the first truly relaxed smile she'd had all day. You do, James. You take care of my heart. She kissed him, and the ballroom erupted in applause. Not polite wedding applause, but the kind of applause reserved for moments that change everything. As the applause died down, Emma's phone buzzed with a text message. She looked at it and her expression changed from joy to concern. James, we need to talk, privately. What's wrong? I just got a message from my attorney. Someone's been trying to access my financial records for the past 6 months. Someone who knew we were getting married. James's face went pale. Emma, what does that mean? It means someone in this room has been investigating me. Someone who suspected I wasn't who I appeared to be. She looked around the ballroom at the 200 faces staring back at her. The question is, Who? And what were they planning to do with that information? Emma's phone buzzed again. This time it was her head of security. Mrs. Wellington, we've identified the person who's been investigating you. You're not going to like this. Who is it? It's someone at your wedding, someone who's been planning to expose you all along. Emma looked at James, then at the crowd of wedding guests who suddenly looked less like family and friends and more like potential suspects. James, our wedding day is about to become a crime scene. Emma's head of security was about to name the person who had been secretly investigating her for 6 months, and the answer would shatter not just her wedding day, but everything she thought she knew about the people closest to her. Because the person who had been trying to expose her secrets wasn't a stranger. It was someone she trusted, someone she loved, someone who was standing right next to her. Emma's hands shook as she held her phone, her security chief's voice coming through clearly. In the silent ballroom, Mrs. Wellington, the investigation into your finances was commissioned by someone with access to your personal information. Someone who knew your real name, your business holdings, and your wedding date. James moved closer to Emma. Who is it? Ma'am, I need you to look at your phone. I'm sending you the paper trail right now. Emma's phone displayed a series of financial documents, private investigator reports, and email exchanges. As she scrolled through them, her face went from confusion to shock to heartbreak. No, she whispered, this can't be right. Emma, what is it? James asked, trying to see her screen. Emma looked up from her phone and her eyes found one person in the crowd. Someone who had been by her side through everything, someone she had trusted with her deepest secrets. Sophia, Emma said, her voice barely audible. My sister Sophia. Sophia Rodriguez stood frozen in her bridesmaid dress, her face going white as everyone in the ballroom turned to stare at her. Emma, I can explain. You hired a private investigator to dig into my finances. You've been spying on me for 6 months. Emma's voice was getting stronger, angrier. She held up her phone, showing the evidence to the room. These emails are from you, Sophia. You paid $50,000 to investigate your own sister's financial history. Sophia stepped forward, tears streaming down her face. Emma, please let me explain why. Why would you do this to me? The ballroom was in complete silence. Even the wedding staff had stopped what they were doing to watch this family drama unfold. Because I was trying to protect you, Sophia burst out. Emma, I thought James was using you. What are you talking about? Emma demanded. 6 months ago, when James proposed, I started noticing things. He never asked about your money. He never seemed curious about your finances. He never tried to get access to your accounts. Sophia was sobbing now, her carefully applied makeup running down her cheeks. I thought he already knew. I thought he'd figured out you were wealthy and was pretending not to know, so he could manipulate you into marrying him without a prenup. James looked stunned. Sophia, that's insane. I had no idea about any of this. That's exactly what someone who was manipulating her would say. Sophia shot back. Rich women get taken advantage of all the time. I was trying to protect my sister. Emma was scrolling through more documents on her phone, her expression growing darker. Sophia, this investigation went way beyond James. You had them looking into his family, his business, his college friends. You had them researching everyone in his life. I wanted to make sure his whole family wasn't in on it. And what exactly were you planning to do with this information? Sophia hesitated, and in that hesitation, Emma saw the truth. You were going to expose me today, weren't you? At my wedding. You were going to stand up and announce to everyone that I was wealthy, to embarrass James's family and prove some kind of point. Emma, no, I just wanted. That's why you insisted on giving a maid of honor speech. That's why you've been so nervous all week. You were planning to humiliate me at my own wedding. Emma's parents, who had been sitting in stunned silence, finally spoke up. Sophia, is this true? their mother asked in Spanish. Sophia answered in rapid Spanish, but Emma cut her off. Speak English, Sophia. Everyone here deserves to know what you were planning. I thought you were making a mistake, Sophia screamed. I thought his family was using you, and I wanted to protect you by showing them that you weren't someone they could look down on, by violating my privacy, by spending $50,000 of your own money to investigate the man I love. Emma looked around the room, then back at her sister. Sophia, where did you get $50,000 to pay for this investigation? Sophia's face crumpled. I took a loan. What kind of loan? A payday loan and a cash advance on my credit cards. And I borrowed from some friends. Emma stared at her sister in horror. Sophia, how much debt did you put yourself in? About $75,000 total. The room gasped. Emma's parents looked devastated. You destroyed your financial life to spy on me? I was trying to save you from making the biggest mistake of your life. Emma was quiet for a long moment. Then she did something that surprised everyone. She laughed. Not a happy laugh, but the kind of bitter laugh that comes from recognizing the ultimate irony. Sophia, do you want to know the most tragic part of this whole thing? What? If you had just asked me, I would have told you everything. If you had just trusted me to make my own decisions, I would have shared my fears about James's family with you. Emma gestured to the projection screen, which was still showing her financial portfolio. If you had just been my sister instead of my self-appointed protector, you would have known that I had everything under control. Emma looked at James, then at her sister, then at the 200 wedding guests who had just witnessed the most dramatic family breakdown in wedding history. Sophia, I need you to leave. Emma, please, you need to leave my wedding, now. Sophia's sobs filled the ballroom. Emma, I'm your sister. I'm your maid of honor. I was trying to help you. You were trying to control me. There's a difference. Emma's father stood up. Mija, maybe we should discuss this privately. No, Papa, this needs to be said here in front of everyone, because everyone here just watched my sister try to destroy my wedding day. Emma faced Sophia one last time. You borrowed $75,000 to investigate whether my husband was worthy of me, but you never once asked whether you were worthy of being my sister. As Sophia gathered her purse and walked toward the exit, Emma's phone rang again. Her security chief. Mrs. Wellington, there's something else. We found additional financial records. Your sister wasn't the only one who commissioned an investigation into your background. Emma's blood ran cold. What do you mean? Someone else has been digging into your finances for the past year. Someone with a lot more resources than your sister. Who? We're still tracking it down, but the payments originated from a shell company registered in Delaware. Whoever this is, they're much more sophisticated than your sister's amateur investigation. Emma looked around the ballroom at the faces staring back at her. If Sophia had been investigating her, who else had been suspicious of her story? Ma'am, there's one more thing. The investigation into your background has been shared with someone who received a full report on your financial status this morning. This morning? Who? We don't know yet. But whoever it is, they know everything about you now, and they're at your wedding. Emma realized that Sophia's betrayal might have been just the opening act. The real threat was still in the room, and they had been planning something much worse than a confrontational speech. As Emma Wellington stood in her wedding dress, having just banished her own sister from the reception, her security chief delivered news that made her blood run cold. Someone else at her wedding had received a complete financial report on her that morning. Someone with resources, connections, and a plan. But when Emma discovered who it was, the revelation would expose a conspiracy that went far deeper than family betrayal. It would reveal that her entire relationship with James had been orchestrated. From the very beginning, Emma's mind raced as she processed what her security chief had just told her. Someone at her wedding had commissioned a professional investigation into her background, someone with serious money and sophisticated resources. "James," she said quietly, "I need to see your phone." "My phone?" "Emma, what's going on?" "Please, just let me see your phone for a minute." James handed over his phone without hesitation. Emma scrolled through his recent messages, emails, and call logs. Nothing suspicious. Then she checked his financial apps. Bank accounts, investment portfolios, business accounts. Everything looked normal until she saw a payment from 3 days ago, $250,000 transferred from Wellington Investments LLC with the memo, "Project Completion." "James, what's Wellington Investments LLC?" James looked confused. That's my family's investment company. "But I don't have access to it. Only my father controls that account." Emma's eyes found James's father, Richard Wellington, who was sitting at the family table looking decidedly uncomfortable. Unlike everyone else in the room, he didn't seem shocked by the evening's revelations. He seemed prepared. "Richard," Emma called out, her voice carrying across the ballroom, "could you join us for a moment?" Richard Wellington stood up slowly, straightening his expensive suit. As he approached, Emma noticed something she'd never seen before. He was carrying a briefcase. "Emma, congratulations on a revealing evening," Richard said with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Richard, I need to ask you about a payment. $250,000 from Wellington Investments 3 days ago." "Ah," Richard said, setting his briefcase on the nearest table. "I was wondering when we'd get to that." James looked between his father and his new wife. "Dad, what payment? What's going on?" Richard opened his briefcase and pulled out a thick folder. "Emma, you're a very impressive woman. Building an $847 million empire by age 28 is remarkable. Keeping it secret for 2 years while dating my son was even more impressive." "You knew," Emma said, her voice flat. "You've known all along." "I've known for 11 months, since the day James told me he was serious about you." Richard pulled out the first document, a comprehensive financial report on Emma Rodriguez, dated over a year ago. "I hired the best investigators money can buy. They found everything. Your businesses, your investments, your charitable giving, even your real estate holdings." James looked like he'd been slapped. "Dad, you investigated Emma behind my back?" "I was protecting you, son, and protecting our family." "From what?" Emma demanded. "From your son finding happiness? From a gold digger with a very sophisticated plan?" Richard pulled out more documents, detailed analyses of Emma's business dealings, her relationships, her family background. "You see, Emma, when I first discovered your wealth, I assumed you were hiding it for tax reasons or legal reasons or because you were involved in something shady. So you investigated me for 11 months? "I did, and what I found was fascinating. A brilliant, wealthy woman pretending to be poor while dating my son. The question was, why?" Richard's smile was cold now, calculating. "I came up with 3 theories. 1, you were hiding assets from creditors or ex-husbands. 2, you were involved in illegal activities. 3, you were testing my son to see if he loved you for yourself." "It was the third one," Emma said quietly. "No, which presented me with a problem." "What problem?" James asked, his voice barely a whisper. "If Emma was testing you, son, that meant she was serious about you. It meant she might actually marry you, and it meant that her $847 million would potentially become part of our family's assets." Emma felt sick. "Richard, what did you do?" "I did what any good father would do. I protected my son's interests." Richard pulled out the final document, a legal agreement Emma had never seen before. "This is a post-nuptial agreement, Emma. It supersedes your prenup and ensures that if your marriage fails, your assets are protected from James, and James's assets are equally protected from you." "I never signed this," Emma said, looking at the document. "No, but James did, this morning. Emma stared at James, who was looking at the document in confusion. "James, did you sign this?" Dad gave me some papers to sign this morning. He said they were just wedding-related documents, insurance forms. You signed a post-nuptial agreement without reading it, without telling me." James looked devastated. "Emma, I had no idea what it was. Dad said it was just paperwork for the wedding venue." Richard was still smiling his cold smile. "James, the agreement protects both of you. Emma gets to keep her fortune. You get to keep yours. Everyone wins." "Except that I was never after James's money," Emma screamed. "I was never a threat to anyone." "But I couldn't be sure of that," Richard replied calmly. "So I took precautions." Emma looked around the ballroom one last time, at the Wellington family who had never accepted her, at her own parents who were watching their daughter's marriage fall apart in real time, at the 200 guests who had just witnessed the most dysfunctional wedding in history. Then she looked at James, who was staring at his father with an expression of complete betrayal. "James," Emma said quietly, "I need to ask you something, and I need you to answer honestly. Anything. Knowing everything you know now about my money, about your father's investigation, about your sister's conspiracy, about all of it, do you still want to be married to me?" James was quiet for a long moment. Then he walked over to his father's briefcase, picked up the post-nuptial agreement, and tore it in half. "Emma Rodriguez Wellington," he said, his voice carrying across the silent ballroom. "I fell in love with a woman who served me coffee and made me laugh. Everything else, your money, my family's money, all of this drama, is just noise." He took her hands in his. "I don't care if you're worth 847 million or 847s. I don't care if my family approves or disapproves. I don't care if your sister thinks I'm not good enough for you. James, I care that you're kind to waiters and tip generously. I care that you remember my coffee order. I care that you laugh at my terrible jokes and pretend my cooking is edible." Emma started crying, not tears of sadness or frustration, but tears of pure relief. "I care about those things too," she whispered. "Then let's get out of here," James said. "Let's go start our actual marriage, away from all these people who seem to think love is a business transaction." Emma looked around the room one last time, then at her new husband. "Where do you want to go?" "Anywhere, as long as it's with you." As they walked toward the exit hand in hand, Emma's phone buzzed one last time. A text from Sophia. I'm sorry. I was wrong about everything. I hope you can forgive me someday." Emma showed the text to James, who squeezed her hand. "Will you?" he asked. "Eventually," Emma replied, "but not today. Today is about us." 6 months later, Emma and James were featured on the cover of Forbes together, not as the billionaire and her husband, but as the power couple revolutionizing charitable giving. The article revealed that Emma had quietly donated $200 million to various causes, while James had sold his tech company and joined Emma's philanthropic efforts full-time. They were interviewed together, sitting in their modest apartment. Emma had sold her penthouse, and they'd bought a normal house in a normal neighborhood. "Any regrets about the wedding?" the interviewer asked. Emma and James looked at each other and laughed. "Only that we wasted money on a big wedding instead of eloping," Emma said. "But we learned something important that day." "What's that?" "That the people who really love you don't care how much money you have," James replied. "And the people who care how much money you have don't really love you," Emma smiled. "Plus, we got a great story out of it." "Speaking of stories," the interviewer said, "we heard your sister Sophia recently started her own financial consulting business." "She did," Emma confirmed. "Turns out all that research she did on me gave her some good insights into wealth management. She's helping middle-class families make better investment decisions, and we're her biggest clients," James added with a grin. "Turns out having a sister who's paranoid about money is actually pretty useful when you're trying to give it all away responsibly." Emma laughed. Family is complicated, but love isn't. Love is actually pretty simple. What's your advice for other couples dealing with family drama around money? Emma and James looked at each other, then back at the interviewer. Elope, they said in unison. That was the most shocking wedding story ever. If Emma's journey from gold digger to billionaire boss just blew your mind, I need you to do something right now. Smash that like button if you believe that real love has nothing to do with bank account numbers. Comment below, what would you do if your family secretly investigated your partner behind your back? Would you forgive your sister like Emma eventually did, or would that be unforgivable? And be honest, would you have eloped after all that drama? Subscribe and hit the notification bell, because next week I'm bringing you the insane true story of Marcus Thompson, who was left at the altar because his fiancée said he was too poor to marry. And then she saw him on TV 5 years later, accepting a Nobel Prize. Share this video with someone who needs to remember that the right person will love you for who you are, not what you have. The ultimate lesson about love and money. This story proves that true love doesn't care about your net worth. Family protection can sometimes be the most destructive force. The best relationships are built on honesty, not assumptions. Sometimes the people closest to you can betray you the deepest. Money reveals people's true character, both good and bad. A strong relationship can survive any external pressure. Emma's wisdom. The people who really love you don't care how much money you have, and the people who care how much money you have don't really love you. Remember, your worth isn't determined by your wealth, and anyone who thinks it is doesn't deserve a place in your life. Whether you're rich or poor, the right person will see your value exactly as you are.